Good evening and welcome to our City Council meeting for Monday, October 5th. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller?
Here.
DeBoer?
Here.
Cruz?
Here.
Harding?
Here.
Dara?
Here.
Sires?
Here.
Dunn?
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we will go to approval of minutes. Item 1, is there a motion to approve regular meeting minutes from
So moved.
September 21st?
Second.
A motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on our agenda is revisions. Do we have any agenda revisions tonight?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. In our first special order of business, item number 2 is a public hearing on a proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the Green Hill Road and South Main Street intersection improvements project, and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project.
Move to receive and file proof of publication.
It's been motioned
Second.
and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications tonight?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Before moving to public comments, we'll have staff comments from City Engineer Dave Wicke. So, Mr. Wicke, go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Green Hill South Main intersection is a project identified in our capital improvements plan for reconstruction, as you're aware. And part of that reconstruction of that project will be utility improvements, replacement and improvements of water main and gas and electrical. The idea of this intersection improvement is to improve the traffic flow and safety of that intersection. As you are all aware, there are certain challenges with certain turning movements at that intersection currently, so this project will help to alleviate that. As far as this project goes, we are looking at some temporary construction easements and some fee title acquisition for the current design of this project. Right now we have 2 fee title properties that we'd be looking for acquisition, and then on those 2 also temporary construction easement, and then an additional 3 temporary construction easements as well. So 5 total properties for construction easements and 2 fee title acquisitions for right-of-way. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wicke. I'll open it up now for public comment. So does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item from the floor? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gary Wilson. I live at 4319 South Main, intersection of Green Hill and South Main there. So my concerns with this is when we went to the 3 public meetings last year that was conducted, input and a lot of open design and concepts, a lot of things were shared. When we left those meetings, it looked like the intersection of that, the centering of that was going to be at the center of the intersection with Green Hill South Main. Now then the design shows it significantly shifted toward my property. This is a needed change. We know this is going to happen, but I would like some consideration to be given about, can it be moved back toward more to the fairway, more centered? It moves it farther away from my property a little bit. There's several concerns with that. Right now, I have a very difficult time making a left-hand turn into and out of my property. When I come home, I've been rear-ended once on Green Hill trying to turn in and left. This will add an additional turn lane or a traffic lane in front of my property, so I will virtually have to turn right to get in and turn right to get out. That's a major inconvenience. The other 2 properties that are affected by this, not Fairway, but the residential ones, there's an extensive burn that was put up during the construction of Green Hill, a berm, and then noise abatement of the fences on top of that. I know on this project that we're going to go ahead and redo the wood fences up there to help the noise situation and expand that, but on my side, I have not seen anything there. It's not planned to have any kind of, moving that closer to me and not having a burn, not having a fence there is a concern for my privacy, for the noise, and then the last thing that is really affecting me is the bike trail is going to be located now. It's not going to go to the intersection. It's going to be moved toward my property. We will have many more people everybody that travels east and west on that bike trail will now then truncate somewhat at my corner there, be congregated, waiting for a clearance to safely cross that, so my privacy goes down. I have some landscaping that I've put up over the years to try and get privacy and noise abatement on my own. I don't know how much this project is going to affect it. You know, the city engineers have come out, they've been very good about sharing and the belief that it would not affect it, but I know during construction, large trees do not like to have their root balls disturbed, and this can all go away. So my property becomes devalued more and more with these projects that come through here. And I just want some, before final design consideration is completed, that's all looked at. And if it can be moved slightly farther away, the more away it would be, the better for me. And then any kind of alleviation of noise and helping me with my privacy concerns. Because it's this is, again, just feels like it's devaluing my properties more and more every time we do something at this intersection. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next speaker for public comment from the floor, Ms. Pop.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Penny Pop. I live at 4805 South Main. As you may remember, I stood here a few years ago to advocate the need to address Green Hill and Main intersection improvements and the importance of this project being removed from the list of unmet needs in our city's capital improvement program. Council agreed, and the Green Hill and Main intersection was funded. A corridor study occurred in 2018 and suggested plans for each intersection from Cedar Heights Road to Hudson Road to anticipate current and future needs. Some of the recommendations included roundabouts, traffic signals, and stop signs. For Green Hill and Main, two options were presented: roundabout and signalization. Public informational meetings were held and very well attended. Comments and ideas flowed. The South Main and Green Hill Corridor Neighborhood Association also held a listening session for all of council to hear comments, questions, and concerns from our impacted neighbors. Many items were discussed, including the willingness of all of our neighbors to equally share in the impact of either design. The assurance was given by the city engineer at the time. The Green Hill Corridor's traffic study was received and adopted on January 15, 2019 by Council. Design was slated for 2020. Each January, Council starts to address our funding for the Capital Improvement Program. During the public hearing on January 20, 2020, I stood before you and questioned the changes that occurred in this project. The most glaring change had been the description of the project. Previously, it was, and I quote, "This project will construct or reconstruct the intersection with separate turn lanes." For 2020, it reads, and I quote, "This project will reconstruct the intersection to a roundabout." I inquired about the change in description as Council had not yet discussed or approved a final design. I did not receive a satisfactory answer. At the regular Council meeting of May 4, 2020, Council approved an application for a Traffic Safety Improvement Program grant from the Iowa Department of Transportation, specifically for a roundabout. In the application, it is stated, quote, "Roundabouts were the preferred method of control for the corridor and were approved by City Council," unquote. Council approval of this specific intersection had not yet occurred, as evidenced by the answer given to Council that by submitting the application, it did not lock the city into a roundabout design. Due to COVID-19 restraints, the city provided for public input virtually with the new consultant of Shive Hattery. I attended an in-person meeting with representatives of the city and Shive Hattery in June. A roundabout option was the only option considered. When asked about a signalization option, no satisfactory answer could be given. This past week, I have spoken with 6 of 7 council members. I also attended 3 in-person meetings with individual council members and staff at the request of an impacted neighbor. I was not surprised at the different views that each council member had on this project. Tonight, council is expected to take action on the Green Hill and Main project by means of this public hearing and apply good governance. The packet provided the public and council 2 pages to consider, a cover letter from staff and a picture of the roundabout. Good governance should include the consideration of readily available information such as the 2014 AECOM Green Hill Traffic Study, the 2018 Green Hill Corridor Study, public informational handouts, public input. Taken as a whole, the city tried to include all stakeholders. At the last council meeting of September 21st, I asked several questions that related to this project, not about the design itself, but to encourage interest in this important project. Last week, I became aware that the city administrator had provided some answers to these questions to council, along with a link to the 2018 Green Hill Corridor Study. I want to thank the city administrator and staff for the response. I would hope it was an unintentional oversight that I did not receive a copy of the answers. Mr. Mayor, I will be approaching 5 minutes
Yes, I
in
apologize for
my
that.
remarks, and I would like Mayor and Council to consider a few extra seconds so I can complete my remarks.
I would allow that. I'm okay.
Thank you. Tonight, I have yet just a few more important questions to consider. 1, did Council approve a final design for a roundabout at the Green Hill and Main intersection before tonight? 2, will the consultant provide and Council consider a signalization option as warranted by the messaging the city provided and prior expert study? 3, the studies show that a signalization option will improve the level of service, or LOS, to a C, whereas a roundabout will improve the LOS to a B. Both LOS ratings of C or B will adequately serve future traffic loads. Will this give Council a sufficient reason to choose the most cost-effective measure? 4, will a representative from CFU explain the 2013-2014 $12 million FEMA-funded project that included the newly constructed distribution line and the costs involved to relocate all utilities? It is my understanding that a signalization option will not disturb the new distribution line and require minimal costs for a gas line relocation. And for number 5, our Complete Streets program encourages Council to consider roundabouts to traffic control. How is this project able to achieve this goal without a signalization option to even consider before Council tonight? These are important questions that need to be answered before Council, in my opinion, can make an informed decision that will affect our neighborhood and our citywide tax use in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pop. I'll wait until we close the public hearing for answers from staff. But are there additional speakers, either in person, who would like to come forward, or from Zoom?
We do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Numbers ending 0467.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
Yes, this particular project, I was disappointed with the explanation given by the whoever gave it. There was no cost mentioned. There was no indication that there would be a better cost output if something else, because I know from acquiring properties and all the other things that have to be done, that this particular roundabout will cost at least $6 million. Okay? Now, that wasn't given by the person who introduced this item. Also, this item does not provide for public safety. They have places where people can cross, but if traffic is approaching at 35 miles an hour and a person tries to cross there, it's not safe. But my real point is that the city has a better option. All you have to do is look at University and Round. Now that has an optimized light, and at that intersection, there is safe and effective traffic coming, and it only costs, because I'm pretty sure that my figures are right, it only cost about $500,000 to do that intersection. Now, $500,000 could do, and you already have $500,000, and I'm sure that the money for a roundabout could be transferred to the optimized light, because the design of that intersection will be broken if the roundabout is put there. And it will cost $6 million to do, at least, because from the experience that we had on University, where the roundabouts were put in, there was $20 million that was provided. The contract with FOS said $32.5, and the final cost was between $40 and $60 million. So it's not something that should be ignored. And also, now it wasn't in the rendering tonight. It was interesting. The rendering tonight did not have any details. When other places where this has been talked about, it showed that there would be a center piece that would be decorative, but would also impact the safety of that intersection. So it makes no sense to go roundabout. You can repair it with an optimized light and a few lanes added without disturbing property, because I've examined that intersection multiple times, and it just is ridiculous for the council to even consider putting a roundabout at that particular South Main and Green Hill intersection. I'm amazed that the city administrator would push so hard for a roundabout. Obviously, there is no consideration for the people of Cedar Falls when you put in the roundabout. I mean, I drive
15
University
seconds
all
remaining,
the
sir.
time. I drive University all the time. And the traffic load on University is very, very low. The only place that it has anything considerable to...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skeen. You're at time, sir.
Well, now you gave Penny Pop a little bit more time. I don't know why I can't have a little bit more time.
Thank you. So with Miss Pop, because I had my telephone set wrong and I was using a ringtone, it was distracting, so I felt it was appropriate to provide her with a little extra time.
Okay.
All right, so
Next person,
yes, please go ahead.
Brian Kalina?
Brian Kalinas, go ahead, sir. Good to hear from you. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, yeah. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Go right ahead, Brian.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Great. Okay, so, yeah, this is Brian Klein. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council. So I'm representing my mother, Millie Sesma, at 113 Balboa Avenue. Yeah, we've been in contact with city staff and city council members since 2015 regarding our concerns that as little of my mother's property as possible at 113 Balboa Avenue be required for any modifications. So I should note that her property is on the southwest corner of the intersection of Greenhill and South Main. Yeah, you can see that quite readily on the schematic. In addition to being in contact with city staff and city council since 2015, yeah, we've been studying this intersection quite a bit since 2011 for intersection update possibilities. I mean, it's been talked about quite a bit that this is a problematic intersection and will very likely require some modification. Yeah, so we've exchanged a number of emails, phone conversations, city and staff. We'd like to thank city staff and city council for hearing our concerns. So when my mother first moved to her home in 1980, she signed up for peace and tranquility of living on the outskirts of town. And gosh, with the rapid development of the city's south side, and then the addition of Greenhill Road in the early 1990s, a lot of that peace and tranquility was reduced. Greenhill Road basically put a busy four-lane roadway in her backyard, and we did not like that. So some of the resulting decrease in enjoyment of her home, it was helped out when the city let my mother purchase some additional property to the east of her, property that had city-owned immediately after the construction of Greenhill Road. But now, much to our discouragement, the city is looking to acquire an ample portion of that. Even more discouraging is that, we just don't think it's right that my mother be asked to give up 4 times as much property as anyone else. 4 times. I want that number to register. We're not talking like 1 or 2, but 4 times as much. We also, I guess, just don't understand why the request to offset the roundabout further to the southeast have been, as near as we can tell, largely ignored. This is something that I've been pushing a lot, and really, I mostly have just wanted a good explanation as to why this cannot be done. We've advocated that the roundabout be pushed more to the southeast so that residential properties that were there even before the construction of Greenhill Road, even prior to the early 1990s, not be asked to make further quality life sacrifice by needing to give up property. So our assessment is that the current design by offsetting the roundabout to the southeast, it's the Fairway property that would be called upon to give up more land than residential homeowners. Right, so can the roundabout be pushed further to the southeast so that the burden is being given to Fairway to more so give up land? Well, why is that fair? Well, I'd like to explain that. Fairway only very recently purchased and developed their site, and did so after public information was available that the intersection would likely need to expand. If Fairway didn't want to potentially have to give up property, why did Fairway develop at its current location? We know that commercial developments like Fairway, they're contributing big time to the increased traffic, which is requiring that the intersection be expanded in the first place. Since Fairway is contributing to this increased traffic, and is seeing business benefit from it, it just seems right to me that Fairway should be the one called upon to give up the most land. I would ask the City Council, just rethink this. In fact, I would say reject this proposal in favor of one that offsets a roundabout further to the southeast and requires that less land from residential properties be required. residential properties that have been there since even before Green Hill was put in. My mother and I, we do think that the roundabout is a good traffic management solution for this intersection.
15 seconds remaining, sir.
I'm sorry? 15
seconds remaining.
Gotcha. Can I have 30 seconds?
15.
Okay. We'd like to thank the city for having done ample research on this, and we'd like to see the adjustments take less from residential homeowners and take more from the newcomer commercial property that's increasing traffic and further driving the need to expand this intersection. Thank you very much for letting my mother and I have a voice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. Next speaker?
No more.
Okay, so that's our final speaker from public comment. And yes, please go ahead, Ms. Smith. Name and address for the record, please.
Whitney Smith, Neola Street. I was waffling on whether or not I wanted to talk about this. This doesn't directly impact me because I no longer live over there, but I did grow up in that neighborhood, and I actually, before Green Hill was even built, I remember riding my bike on the dirt back there when they were just forming it. So I understand that what the previous speaker was talking about of how these people have already given up land. And I think a lot of people, I can think of a few people that still live right over there whose backyards align with Green Hill. So some of my concerns are, number one, the cost. As Mr. Skane brought up, there's an astronomical cost difference. And I'm wondering, was that something that was presented to council? Was there ever an option for one or the other? I personally really do like the roundabouts on University. I hated the construction process. I hated waiting. But when people know how to drive through them, they're wonderful. And I personally drive down University instead of Rainbow because it's faster. But that's also not a residential street. It's not as close to homes, and I really empathize with the people there. So I'd like to know if there was an option presented to council for Project A with light traffics, maybe different lane variations was brought up, or roundabout, or if it's just, here's a roundabout, say yes. I have a lot of concern. As I said, I love the roundabouts on University, but there are people who don't know how to use them. Typically, those are people of senior age, and they really struggle. And at this location, that intersection is the only exit for a lot of the Western Home community. So I have a lot of concern with them being right there, also having the public safety building right there. I mean, what if you have somebody stopped in the intersection and you have a police cruiser or a fire truck trying to come through? It just spells a mess. Or what if there's a car accident there? I mean, that's just going to back up traffic. I'm wondering if some ways to ease the traffic in that intersection would be to put an exit from the Fairway parking lot east of that intersection, straight from the parking lot onto Green Hill. That would definitely alleviate a lot of traffic there. It's clear to me that a lot of these residents came and spoke and said, please don't build a Quick Start, please don't put a Fairway there. We don't want that increased traffic. We don't want it right there. And now it's there. Now there's increased traffic, and now they're getting a roundabout that they really don't want. And so I really hope that consideration is brought and to the property owners and the residents' side of things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other speakers from public, either here in the floor or online? Okay, seeing none, then I will now close the public hearing and bring us into council for the item E, which is a resolution approving public improvement for the Green Hill Road and South Main Street intersection improvements project and authorizing acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded, so now I'll open it up for council discussion.
Were you going to start with answering this?
Can we get the answers? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Is that, so,
Yeah.
No, I meant, could we get the answers to Penny to some of the questions? Because that would probably be some of my questions as well.
okay, so Councilmember Harding asking about questions from Ms. Pop. So city staff, do we have that on file already that we can provide those answers?
I could probably best address a lot of the questions. I don't know about all of them right now, but
Okay, thank you, Director Strachey.
I did my best to write them all down. I may go out of order here, but I know there's a couple different questions about the roundabout concept and kind of the where it sits in the intersection. And initially in the 2018 study, conceptually, you'll take a roundabout and just kind of set it down on an aerial drawing, and it will look symmetrical, but out there in the real world, that the property lines and the alignments on all the 4 adjacent corners is never symmetrical. So that's kind of where we landed with the roundabout design, where it's shown here in the packet tonight. And Denny, if you want to display that first colored image that's in the packet. As you can see, the roundabout is kind of shifted to the northwest slightly. That is due to excess right-of-way that the city owns in the northwest corner, as well as a little bit in the southwest corner. There's another concept that our design consultant reviewed. Denny, if you can flip over to that one, which moved the roundabout to the southeast, which would require additional property acquisition from the Fairway property, as well as the properties in the northeast corner, and actually a significant impact to what I believe is shown on there is the Wheaton property. It would get fairly close to their back deck would be the required acquisition for that. So where we landed with what's shown in the packet tonight, we felt was the best scenario for all parties to have the least amount of impact to their property. There was some comments on CIP language and how it changed from 2018 to 2019. This was solely due to the CIPs generally adopted late or early in the calendar year. And obviously our Green Hill Road traffic study wasn't adopted till January 2019. So it fell at an odd time to where that CIP item never got changed until the next year when we knew the study was adopted and we could modify that language in there. There was reference to a CFU $12 million project that was windstorm, I believe in 2009, 2010. That $12 million FEMA project was solely with CFU, and that was to replace electrical lines throughout the city. That was out in the rural areas, wooden poles along gravel roads. That was Cedar Heights Drive. That was Round Street. There was many locations. It wasn't just solely the South Main intersection. So they received a lump sum to replace those lines. I believe there was some comments on level of service, and I have our design consultant on Zoom right now. His name's Justin Campbell, and he could run through kind of the difference between the signal and the roundabout. I know there's comments on a level of service C for the signal and a level of service B for the roundabout, but Justin can kind of go through the safety components of that as well.
All right. Yeah, I can certainly talk through that. So I guess first, talking through the level of service request was, we looked at the 2018 numbers, but we also forecasted it to 2045, and that's where we found independently that the roundabout would, in 2045, operate at level of service B. And now, the signal that was looked at in the 2018 corridor study, it was a level of service C, but something that we actually looked at since is, what would a signal look like if we were to kind of match a level of service like apples to apples? So that would actually require adding additional lanes. So making Green Hill a 5-lane section, and then adding a northbound and a southbound right turn lane. So that was something that we've looked at since, just to make sure that, comparing it to very similar level of service. Now, from a safety standpoint, there's just a number of things. It's not just how slow the vehicles are going. That's obviously a benefit of roundabouts. Making sure that people are approaching the intersection slowly. but geometry is important. You need to make sure that you have the approaches are correct. You got to make sure that the circle size is correct, and then also the exits. So all these things are put together to make sure that you have a safe flowing intersection. So, and that's something that we've looked at in great detail. We've really tried to look at all the iterations possible. I can appreciate, Brian calling in. We've had a lot of conversations with him from a space, but we've reduced the size of the roundabout from 180 down to 170. And what was nice about that is we were still able to get to roundabout to be safe. We were able to get those speeds. 25 miles an hour or less is the objective, but that's only if you're to cut through all the lanes and drive through as fast as possible. So again, we feel that the roundabout, the way the geometry is set up currently, it'll be the safest possible geometry. Also, from a safety, again, because traffic is moving constantly, I think somebody brought up, emergency response. With a roundabout, because everybody's moving, there's less chances for any crashes at the intersection. This happens throughout the day, and it's been researched significantly. But that means if there's less crashes at the intersections, that means there's less emergency responses that we would need to have. So, again, roundabouts have been proven. They've been installed across the nation in many different locations. So, certainly, safety is a high priority for this project. It's why we landed at the geometry that we did, and then also the fine details as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. I'd also ask, too, for Director Shagi, can you comment on the cost differential that was mentioned by the public?
Yep, those are the remaining two items I have here to cover. The cost difference, I don't have it right here in front of me, but the Green Hill Road, the 2018 Green Hill Road study had the cost comparison of a signal versus a roundabout at that intersection. It's all in that report, as well as the life cycle cost analysis, which in the end shows that the roundabout throughout its entire life will have a cost savings for that intersection.
I actually have those numbers. Want to hear them real quick?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Wiki.
So that 2018 corridor study did a life cycle cost benefit analysis on roundabout versus signalization, and what it does is it gives you an annual cost over a 20-year payback period for that project. And those numbers come in for that 2018 study was annualized life cycle cost for the roundabout was $409,000, and for a signal it would be $682,000. So, when we're looking at cost, we have to look at more than just a upfront construction cost. We have to look at a total cost of a project over the lifetime of it. So that's how those numbers kind of shake out. And that goes back to speak a little bit to what Justin was just saying about safety improvements and traffic flow improvements and, delay times and as well as decreased traffic accidents and serious accidents at traditional intersections. So just food for thought. Thanks.
And for that initial upfront cost, was there any validity for the $6 million versus, or for a roundabout versus $500,000 for continuing with signalized? Can you comment on that?
I don't have any comment. I know it was not $6 million. Our current projections for construction right now that our design consultant put together is right around the $3 million mark.
Okay, other questions from council? Councilmember DeBeer, go ahead.
Well, there was also some confusion from the speakers regarding the history here, and I wanted you to kind of go over, back in January of 2019, it was passed to do the corridor and the roundabouts starting at Cedar Heights. Could you kind of go into that history a little bit?
So the corridor study consisted of multiple public meetings, which got the community input, the local residents and businesses out there. In the end, the final report was intended to outline the short and long-term goals of that corridor, and it was received and adopted in January of 2019. And that would be used as a planning for design of the projects, as well as when we look at putting those in our capital improvements program. And when we would put them in our capital improvements program, we would reference the study and plan for that recommended alternative for that improvement. So it's kind of a planning document to proceed with design.
Quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I was studying the document from 2018, and in there, it outlines a roundabout and a signal. It offers up options. So if you just read the study, it's pretty unclear as to when we adopted it, even though I was not yet on council, which way the city was going to go. And furthermore, in the packet handed out by Schneider and Associates to the public, it also has signal upgrade or roundabout. So I do think that we have a little bit of a confusing process here, and it seems like we've ended up at a roundabout. We've put a lot of time into it. We put a lot of energy into it. To say no is a lot of waste of money, but we weren't ever really given the option. And with the study, it's confusing because both of them are in there. So I think we should look at the process going forward. Some of the intersections are clear cut and it says recommended signal upgrade, recommended light, but the Green Hill and South Main one has recommendations for both. So I would say that the council has not approved a roundabout ever, based off of the information I've studied.
I think we did vote, and that was in January of 19.
To adopt the study, correct?
Adopt the study and to go ahead with the roundabouts. I think there were, I want to say, one at Cedar Heights, one at Green Hill. I think there was one at Prairie Parkway. I can't tell you exactly where they were off the top of my memory. You have the thing there, though.
Mm-hmm. I just was confused because if we adopted the study, it has options for both there. So I think it would have been clear to the public if we had outlined, taken away the option for the signal.
Yeah, and I remember that discussion as Councilmember DeBeer and I had concerns at that January 7th meeting in 2019, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we were concerned that the language of the item was receive or was adopt the study, and my concern was adopting versus receiving and filing. Like, were we taking it in as a saying that we accept what their recommendations are, like we acknowledge that they've completed it? I had questions at the time. I was very concerned that we were potentially approving that it is a roundabout, and so we hadn't even had really the discussion about it at the council level. So I certainly agree that for the timing, at where we're at now, certainly a lot of work has been put into it, but I don't see that we have committed in any way legally. Certainly we put in some time and effort into it, but we've not committed ourselves. And so this discussion tonight is that milestone point to say, do we proceed with the roundabout, or do we request maybe an additional study work for a signalized intersection instead? And that's totally the council's prerogative on how you want to proceed on that.
I do think, though, that the record shows it was received and filed and adopted.
Adopted, you're correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus?
I have a few concerns about this roundabout. The biggest concern is we don't have any flashing lights for pedestrians. There's no way to get across that safely. There'll be no stopping of traffic for pedestrians or kids with their bikes or anything else. I used to take my kids for bicycle rides, and there was 5 of us, and it's kind of, it would be a nightmare to go across that roundabout. Also, there's no warning lights for emergency vehicles. We never did get a price of moving that big pole, and I would like to have seen a little more study on having the traffic lights. My wife sat there and counted cars on Saturday afternoon, and coming from the north in 100 minutes, she counted 511 cars. How many turned? 211 turned left, 114 went straight, 186 went to the right. And the thing she said, if there had just been a turning lane and some lights, everybody could have got through there safely. And I would like to see another option, especially with the pedestrians and especially with the bike trail and all the traffic that it would have. It just doesn't seem like a safe move in that particular area. I don't mind roundabouts, but I just think in that spot it's very wrong. We have the Western home up there. That's going to be a concern with them. It just doesn't seem like the right place. The traffic lights would be a much better move, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn?
Okay, so I think I've said this before. I live in the neighborhood of University Avenue. I utilize those roundabouts not only with driving but with walking. Last week, I walked over to the Black Hawk Village area, and I don't know how many people have actually walked across the roundabout, because when you've done it, if you do it, I think you'll find that it's very safe. First, you're looking one way. Oftentimes, there's nobody coming, but if there is, either they're in the part where they yield and they see you and you make eye contact and you proceed, or they're already in the traffic circle and you know that as the pedestrian, you'll wait for them to come out. And I have children who, my biggest fear as a parent is drowning and getting hit by a car. And I can tell you that I feel that they are very safe with the roundabouts. So I have a problem when folks say they're not safe to cross as a pedestrian. I challenge you, I don't know if people have actually walked across the roundabout. It's much safer than crossing 5 to 6 lanes of traffic. And I can say that as a person who used to, when we like to walk in our neighborhood. So when we used to cross University Avenue the way that it was often me grabbing like a hen with chicks and quickly trying to get them across and pray that somebody didn't blow through that traffic light. And again, I work on Prairie Parkway, so I go through that intersection no less than 4 times a day. You move so much quicker through a roundabout. The traffic never stops. And yes, there needs to be a learning curve for a lot of folks. I do feel like we're getting better over time. I'm teaching a 14-year-old right now to drive through roundabouts, and it can be challenging. But I don't think it's a secret. I'm a big proponent of the roundabout, and I don't feel like they stop traffic, and I feel like they are so much safer. And the cost, we just talked about the cost. The cost is significantly less over the lifetime. So I just want to make sure, go walk across it. It's not as intimidating as people make it sound.
Councilmember Harding?
I agree with Kelly on many things. I like roundabouts. I have really no issue with them. I've talked with many people in the city and many citizens about how I think they make our city more progressive and safer. And there's environmental positivities as well. I guess my question is in the process of how we ended up here. And I do have a couple questions for staff. One, if the study that we adopted showed signal upgrade, turn lanes, or roundabout, why did we end up here without an option of a signal or a turn lane? And then 2, in this issue of the currents, if you look at the picture, there are 3 residential areas, and 2 of them have these beautiful fences, and 1 of them doesn't, which is the property that I went to and saw was definitely most affected. I would like to know if it's possible, why can't we just if we're going to go with the roundabout, why can't we just add the 3rd fence and put the 3rd fence over there so that all the residential properties each have a fence to go around them? Why the one residential property doesn't have it? So those will be my questions.
Director Shaw.
Sure.
That's kind of what I thought we were going to be talking about tonight, is how to accommodate the Wilsons and other people that will be affected by this roundabout. To me, relitigating, we had years worth of public input meetings on this project. And I don't know that we voted on that particular piece of paper. It seemed to me that we voted to approve the roundabout options on Green Hill Road. And this is another example. A couple of weeks ago, we had something come up where council was very planful in making a decision, made a recommendation to the staff to go forward with that recommendation. And then when they come to make the presentation, we say, well, we don't want that, go back to the drawing board. I think we have an obligation, number one, to understand what we voted on a year ago. If we approve that, then we need to be supportive of the staff and the work that they've done to get us to this point. We're choosing this option because of over time, the long-term versus short-term cost. It's ultimately over 30 years. It's going to be a cheaper project. Safety, there's no question. Jim Skane can say whatever he wants about roundabouts, but they are safer. They are more efficient. We have, I don't know how, there's probably 70 businesses on University Avenue that either have rebuilt or remodeled, and maybe 70 is an exaggeration, 30, that have done some sort of improvement since University Avenue has been built. We built it partly because it's our economic benefit, but these roundabouts are safer, they're more efficient, we save energy, we save time, we save lives. And I could have sworn a year ago we said, go to work on this so we can start. My concern about this, well, now my concern is, are we going to go ahead with it, or are we going to go back to the drawing board? But hopefully we're going to move forward. But my concern is, when we did University Avenue, we were held hostage by several businesses that did not want to sell or did not want to give in, and we gave a lot of money away to those businesses. I think as a city, if we're impacting the quality of someone's life by their tearing out bushes or moving the road close to their house, we need to be willing to spend a little money to accommodate, to ensure that their quality of their property is not diminished as much as we can. So I'm hopeful tonight, when we approve to move forward with this, that we can also add to it some way to work with the Wilsons and the other neighbors to ensure that we're still going to impact them. When I met with them, they had a realization that things were going to change. All they want is to be treated fairly by the city. And I hope that we can do that if we move forward with this. But sorry for the lecture, but I've been clearly thinking for a year, this is our project, and now we need to move forward with it and deal with these individual roundabouts. So that's what I have to say, and it's regrettable that we're even having relitigating the value of this type of roadway.
Okay, thank you. And I want to be sure we don't lose Councilmember Harding's questions that you'd had for Director Schrage. So, Director Schrage, do you have those? Would you like Councilmember Harding to repeat those?
I believe I have them. One of them was related to the picture that was in currents. Obviously, that's a conceptual drawing just to show what it potentially could look like, not a real-time where the fences will be located and which house is which on each of the corners. It's just kind of a high-level conceptual rendering. Referenced some sheet in the study as it relates to signal versus roundabout. Was that a public informational handout flyer provided by Snyder at a public informational meeting that was included in the study?
There was, but in the study itself, it talks about a roundabout, and it also talks about, it's on like page 25, I believe, 25 or 27. It talks about how much, what page? Page 20. Oh, okay, page 20. I was off a little, sorry. But it does talk about their using a signal. And so don't get me wrong, I like roundabouts. I'm for roundabouts. I was just confused when the study was received and adopted. The study does talk about at this intersection multiple options. It was one of the intersections that had multiple options and alternatives to it. And so by receiving and adopting, it's not really clear that it wasn't clear to me that we were going full roundabout, and that was the approval for the roundabout. That's all. My point is just to we could make the process clearer. And
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that maybe we should talk about, though, everybody's getting stuck at the adoption age of this or point, but the council also did vote in March of 2020 on a contract to hire the consultant to specifically design a roundabout. Mm-hmm. So that was the scope. So that was also a decision point where the council made the cognitive decision to move ahead with a roundabout design.
Fair enough.
March of 2020.
Yeah, with the grant application, correct?
Nope, that was the actual design consultant.
Okay. My main concern, we can talk about the process more later, is ultimately back to Frank's thing. Whether this is a conceptual drawing or not, I guess my question would be more specific. Are we rebuilding a fence on the other two properties?
I don't have the image in front of me, but I let Mrs. Wilson know last week when I met with them that as we get into the negotiation of the easements, live screening will be discussed, the potential for a possible fence will be discussed. So there's many alternatives throughout design that we'll continue negotiations as we move forward with the property owners.
I respect that, but are we building fences on the other ones? Like, is it already determined in the design that we're building a fence on the other two properties? Yes, or?
The existing fence that's out there
Yes.
will be rebuilt.
Be rebuilt. And the other one across the way is like a smaller one. Are we just going to rebuild that smaller, or are we going to rebuild it larger all the way around?
Are you referring to the northeast corner?
The corner that is direct.
The gentleman talked about, wasn't he the one on the phone?
That's Brian's property. If you're standing at Fairway, it's directly. If you're standing at Fairway staring at.
The northeast corner will be rebuilt in the same location as it is, and we have been in discussions with the property owners as you go around the corner on Main Street, where the wall stops, is extending it slightly further.
Okay.
And that's another part of the easement acquisition negotiations that we'll have with the property owners.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to see, and I don't know how this process goes with the easement negotiations. I just don't want to see this family not get a fence as well. If the other two sides are getting a fence and we're separating them from the roundabout, I feel like they would deserve equal treatment to get a fence as well. And I just want to make sure that we don't pass this and then somehow they end up with no fence. That's my biggest concern. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
Would it be a fence or some other natural screening of their choice? I really think we ought to accommodate them as best.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
I mean,
if they want.
fence, then
Let's try to control the discussion a bit here. Councilmember DeBur, do you have something you wanted to add?
When we talked about this, like back in, what was it, 19 or 20, one of the big concerns on the design was that Balboa would be able to turn left and right, and I believe that still is what the final plan will be, is that Balboa will not be a right in, right out, but it'll be just as it is today, where they can make a left turn out. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then the other question was the people on Balboa, that when you talk about the fence, I think there's a process that's going to go on regarding the type of fence and the height of the fence, and can you just describe a little bit about how that process will be with those people?
I think as we move forward in kind of the final design elements, we'll kind of have a public meeting with the stakeholders that have a fence that will be reinstalled and or installed, and gauge some of their input with our recommendation of material used and height and those types of things. So,
Okay, Councilmember Miller?
I just kind of wanted to echo Frank's sentiments. Staff doesn't do anything unless we provide them direction, and we continually find ourselves in these situations. I mean, we are so planful with most of these projects, anything like this, that it's been years in the making, and I guess it just frustrates me that we get to this point, and now we're questioning whether or not we even want a roundabout there. I mean, I think University Avenue is a prime example of the benefits of roundabouts, both in terms of some of the points Simon was saying too, as far as being a progressive community and planning for the future. I mean, these roadways are 50-year projects, and roundabouts work in so many ways better than traffic signals. So it's frustrating for me that we're constantly defending some type of a scandal or something along those lines that is happening here. I mean, we vote on these things numerous times and try to be as transparent as possible with the public regarding every aspect of it. So it frustrates me, but I do as well hope that we work with the homeowners and do our very best to make sure that we offer them some options.
Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I took a look here a little closer at the numbers, and I realized the numbers are estimates, but usually are reasonably accurate on life cycle costs, savings between signal versus roundabout. And I took the 273,000 annual savings divided into the 2.8 million cost of building. It pays for itself in 10 and a quarter years. Let's say 11 years. And usually I've heard people say that highway construction's 20 years to 50 years, that Mr. Miller said. This is a win-win for the community. It, like I say, pays for itself. The safety aspect of it, you've got these pedestrian islands in here, if that's the right term, these little triangles where, as my colleague Dunn had said, you walk across looking one direction, you get into the island, then you look the other direction and so on. And safety aspect is there. If the design justifies, or the traffic flow justifies a yellow flashing light like we have in University, we can look at that. I mean, it's not set in stone. I mean, there's aspects here that can be modified as we go on. And then for the property owner in the northwest corner, Mr. Wilson there, with the fact that the bicycle trail, well, pedestrian bike trail gets closer, I would definitely be in favor of putting in some fencing, vegetation, landscaping, what have you. It just totally makes sense to be equal with the other residential corners. So those are my thoughts. I'm very much in favor of it. So
Yeah, thank you.
given those considerations.
Any other final comments or thoughts?
Is it something that would be necessary to make a motion to, or make a motion to amend it to make sure that we work with the properties owners, the Wilsons, to, or is that something, mine being naive about the easement negotiations, that would happen during that, and how does that proceed?
Based on my understanding, for the item that's before us is to undertake the public improvement project and to authorize acquisition, but it doesn't specify what that acquisition looks like. It just allows us to proceed forward. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. And this is also, we're getting to the stage now, once this is approved, when we start moving forward with property acquisition, you start to get into that fine detail or fine design. And so, as Ms. DeBoer pointed out, we'll be going into the part of the process where you determine what type of fence we're getting, how high the fence is going to be, where fences will be, where landscaping will be. So all of those details are still in the process of being worked out. So yes, we will be working out with that. And I think we've got a very good track record of working with property owners. I think when the original concept on University Avenue came out, there was 5 or 6 total takes. Well, as we refined our design, we actually didn't have any total takes on that particular project. So we're very much willing to work with the property owners.
So does that satisfy the question then?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion from council? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote. Sorry,
Are we
doing
pressing
electronic?
the button, or are we-
This-
Not flashing?
No.
Okay. Well, it was working
It's
earlier.
been a while since we've done this
Yep.
live.
Well, we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires? Dunn?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
DeBoer?
Aye.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to old business, which is item 3, passing ordinance 2970, amending Chapter 23, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing a 4-way stop at the intersection of 12th Street and Walnut Street upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and seconded. Council discussion? Oh, excuse me, any public comment first? And then I'll open it for council discussion. Any public?
None in Zoom?
Okay, seeing none, and council chambers, seeing none. So to council discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Sires, please.
I drove through that again on my way here. I come off of Hudson Road and come down to the council chambers. That intersection, now that it's been cut down, is more safe than ever. I just think an extra stop sign there would be a mistake, but that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires, Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer.
Aye.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 4, which is passing ordinance 2971, granting a partial property tax exemption to Owen 5 LLC for construction of an industrial use shop faculty facility at 1325 Railway upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded. Open for council discussion. Anyone from the public wish to discuss?
Yes, we do. 0467, Jim Skane.
Yeah, Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
Yes, the objection that I have is that our tax money will not be coming in with these, and there's been no justification thus far as to why these companies need these tax exemptions. It just evidently has been a pattern that the city has gone through, and it just has made it difficult. I mean, our services, our public services, are at an all-time low, and we need to have more income. And so it just seemed to me that these handouts, like, for instance, downtown, I know that the tax abatement down there is 100%. They don't pay any taxes. And yet they're asking for all kinds of money to be spent by the city to repair and renovate that whole area from downtown up to 18th Street. It just seems to me that the city government, and of course the city government is Mr. Gaines, is being frivolous with money that he doesn't have and we don't have. And I just am so unhappy that we go through this particular process, and there's been no indication. Again, there's been no indication why these companies need these kinds of subsidies. But I know what the direction of the council is. The council goes along with what is recommended by Mr. Gaines, and it just seems to be discouraging. And I won't speak on the other ones, but I have the same objection to those other tax exemptions. But I have no doubt that this council will not disapprove of any of these. But, that's for the council to support the city administrator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. And just as a response to that, Mr. Skane doesn't understand the process, and I'll just be clear about that. Every year, toward the end of the year, council sets goals for city staff, and each year in those goals, there is an item, and we'll discuss that item again this year, about the city offering the same kinds of financial incentives comparable to other Iowa cities in order to attract business. That's the direction that Mr. Gaines follows. He doesn't come up with this on his own. If there are concerns or questions about this, talk to your council member if you disagree. because I will just state that Mr. Gaines is acting at the council's direction on this item. And that's all I'll say about that.
I agree.
Councilor Harding.
I was just going to say I agree that we set the tone at goal setting, and these incentives definitely help Cedar Falls be competitive with economic growth. So
Certainly. And I just had a question about that comment about downtown businesses not paying any taxes. That's incorrect. Mr. Gaines?
Yeah, that's incorrect. I'm not quite sure. There is, on some businesses, they do have a 5-year 100% tax abatement. Off the top of my head, I know Shane Graham's on, and he could explain that a little bit further if we want to, but they have to meet the certain, as you were saying, Mr. Mayor, within that economic development policy, they have to meet that criteria in order to qualify for those tax abatements.
Right. And just as a Civics 101, the goal for that is, as we give away property, city-owned property in the industrial parks and in other places, that comes with a lot of strings attached. And there's a requirement that these properties have a valuation after construction, that then as they come into full operation and their tax abatements end, or rebates, that they are then able to fully contribute into the tax base. And that's what we're counting on, is that long-term investment in these companies. So there is a definite reason for doing that, and it's a reason that makes financial sense for the city and for the businesses that we attract. So any other comments on that? I guess
I might say, if we did not offer some of these incentives, then those businesses would go to some other community that did.
Correct.
And it's these small businesses that keep us going, and if we can help get them started, they'll survive. So it's part of the deal.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers for public comment on this item?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I'm seeing none in the council chambers. So any final council discussion? Then it's been motioned and seconded for item 4. All in favor say aye. Excuse me, this requires a roll call vote. So, Madam Clerk?
she got it.
It works.
Jackie.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That moves us to item 5, which is passing ordinance 2972, granting a partial property tax exemption to Jaden Properties LLC for construction of an industrial use manufacturing shop facility at 2800 Technology Parkway upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
So motioned and seconded. Any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and seeing none in the council chambers, I'll open it for council discussion. Seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 6 is passing ordinance 2973, granting a partial property tax exemption to Zoodberg NA LLC for its construction of an industrial use warehouse and office facility at 2700 Capitol Way upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The motioned and seconded. Public discussion? Seeing none and none in the chambers, then council discussion and questions. Seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That moves us into new business, and the first is our consent calendar. These items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member wish to pull an item from 7 to 12? Seeing none, does anyone from the public wish to pull an item from 7 to 12?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Jim Skane.
Okay, Mr. Skane, which item would you like to pull tonight from the consent calendar?
Yeah, 9.
9, okay. So I will read items 7 through 12 with the exception of 9, and that's receive and file a proclamation recognizing October 12th, 2020 as Indigenous Peoples Day. Item 8 is approving the following recommendations relative to appointment of members to boards and commissions. Item 10 is receiving and filing the Committee of the Whole minutes relative to refuse rate study and snow removal on trails. Item 11 is receiving and filing departmental monthly reports for August 2020. And I would just like to make a quick note from the memo I put on that. to express our city's thanks, particularly for the workers from Public Works who participated in the derecho response from August 10th onward, particularly for Public Works and the traffic control operations. It was a tremendous service to Cedar Rapids. And Director Schrage, if you can please pass our thanks along to your staff. Item 12 is approving applications for beer permits and liquor licenses. So is there a motion to approve these items minus 9?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so that passes, or excuse me, opposed. Then that passes, and that brings us back to item 9, which is receiving and filing the City Council work session minutes of September 21st relative to the City Council goal-setting format. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Been motioned and seconded. Open it for discussion. So, Mr. Skane, if you can give your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, this is an important item, and since it was decided at the work session, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to know what the recommendations were from that work session, since the agenda doesn't indicate what that is. And I would hope that there would be some revisions to the process, because there's no reason for the public to be shut out of goal setting. The public has a vested interest in goal setting, and therefore it would be better if the goal setting sessions were open to contributions from the public, and if the goal setting actually could take place in the time slot for the committee as a whole, and may take several weeks to complete. But the point is, it would be a move of making the City Council more responsive to the people. And there's been, because like the agenda tonight, the only things on the agenda are ever the things that were decided at the goal setting a year ago. And Mr. Gaines knows that. And there should be agenda items that never get there. And I really think that it's a travesty to have goal setting that it, includes only the city administrator and the city council members, and however you do it, that also excludes the people. Now, this time it might be that there's the recommendation that the people have better observation, but that doesn't match with the notion of public participation in goal setting. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, but it's a critical matter to me. It really is, because like even the discussion on the roundabout at South Main, it was pre-programmed, and it just should be. I mean, we have so many problems that the public are not even involved with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. To talk, since I had written the memo for the session, I can certainly say that the highlights of that we discussed in that work session were, one, to offer citations, so documents that appear in the goal-setting document that we approve and is included in the city's decision-making. Those will include citations and links to the supporting documents. So that way it's easier for council members and for the public and staff to see what some of those particulars are when we refer to the North Cedar Master Plan or the Island Park or the Master Parks Plan. So that's just a good practice in general, so that people can understand where some of the background information is coming from, and to make government more accessible to the people. Another one was having, what were some of the other ones? There's so many of them. Acronyms, dejargonizing.
Yeah, a survey for after we talk with the staff about what we want to see at goal setting.
Right. So I'd asked if we could put in the ability for us as council members meet with the facilitator from Iowa State. He helps us out in our actual goal setting, the 2-day sessions. I asked if when council brings forward these ideas that they want to talk about, that then we would have a survey that goes back out to council, listing each of those items and asking how much council is interested in talking about those individual items. And that will filter out things that probably aren't going to get a lot of buy-in from council, but it'll make sure that we have time to talk about things that the majority of council wants to discuss. So it's just a planning aid or helpful aid for that. Another key part of that was the organization of the document, which we're already doing, making the language a little bit clearer. We reduced the number of goals down from 7 to 5, which will help us with our messaging and hopefully will keep the conversation moving forward more easily with the public. And then the last one was having the agendas. So rather than having one single agenda for both days, going forward, we're going to have an agenda for the first day and an agenda for the second day, so that way it's easier for the public, which certainly is more than welcome to attend. They're invited to attend. For these 2 sessions, you'll have a better chance of you'll be able to know what's being covered for that day. And it's going to be our first time trying that. We'll have to be a little flexible to make sure it works well, but I think that'll make it so you know which night to attend if there's only one topic you want to be part of and to listen to.
Excuse me, Mayor,
we don't.
We're actually breaking that down into 4 separate,
we
2
just,
nights.
Yeah, 2 nights.
But 4 or 5 topics for the first 2 hours, and then a whole new 4 or 5 topics for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, we will split it up so that we'll have a dinner time in the middle there, but we're not going to split it as I originally proposed, having 4 separate work sessions, which is just going to be 2, and then we're going to set some dinner time in there on each
I
night.
was thinking we were still limiting each session to certain topics and move on. If we needed more time, add time at the end. Did
Correct.
I misunderstand that?
That's correct. So with that, the goal setting sessions are one of the most important meetings of the whole year, because it decides what sorts of things we want the city to focus on. So we don't do public participation in those, but the public can obtain a copy of last year's goal setting document. They often continue from year to year. If you have questions or you have things you want to address, bring it up with your council members now if it's an important topic to you. And certainly attend the meeting as well to understand how that process works. So any other questions or thoughts on that, Councilmember Cruz?
I was just going to say, we're just receiving and filing the minutes. We're not really, are we supposed to be elaborating?
That's true.
Okay.
I mean, so we're just.
You did a really good job there of summarizing.
You caught me.
I do have a question when it comes to the referral time. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my apologies. I always try to stick to saying this is just to do the minutes and not the topics of the minutes themselves. So
I got an extra point to kill, right?
My mistake. Thanks for catching me on that. So it's been motioned and seconded for receiving and filing the work session minutes. And all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that passes. And that moves us into the resolution calendar, which is the following items being acted on by roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does council wish to pull any items from 13 to 19? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone from the public wish to pull an item 13 through 19?
Yes, Catherine Sogard.
Okay, Ms. Sogard, which item would you like to pull tonight?
Number 17, please.
Number 17, okay. And any others?
Jim Skane.
Okay, Mr. Skeen, which items would you like to pull tonight from resolution calendar?
19.
Okay.
19.
All right, so I have 19, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and read the items from 13 to 18, and then I'll cover 17 and 19 separately. So 13 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a 2080 agreement for tobacco, alternative nicotine, and vapor product enforcement with the Iowa Alcoholic Beverages Division. 14 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of 3 owner purchase agreements, approving a claim for non-residential relocation assistance reimbursement, and a public utility easement, and 3 owner temporary easements in conjunction with the Cedar Heights reconstruction project. 15 is a resolution approving and accepting the contract and bond of Peterson Contractors for the Mandalay Slope Stabilization Project. Item 16 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a pre-design agreement for primary road project with the Iowa Department of Transportation relative to the Highway 58 and Ridgeway Avenue reconstruction project. 18 is a resolution approving public zoning district site plan for construction of a new high school located in the vicinity of West 27th Street and PE Center Drive. And is there a motion to approve these items minus 17 and 19? Second. So a motion and seconded. This requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that brings us back to item 17, which is a resolution approving the College Hill Neighborhoods Overlay Zoning District Site Plan for temporary wheat paste murals in the College Hill Business District. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded. Open it up for public comment. So Ms. Sogard, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council, and I won't take up too much of your time.
And a name and address for the record, please, real quick.
Oh, I apologize. My name's Catherine Sogard. I live at 330 Columbia Circle in Waterloo, and I am the Executive Director of the College Hill Partnership.
Thank you.
Projects like this allow our community to collaborate with the university. The College Hill Partnership always supports projects that bring multiple entities, including students, businesses, and the community members together for the betterment of College Hill and our community. We saw a great deal of attention to College Hill with the last wheat pasting project Fort Upon and UNI installed. And know that this will be another opportunity to highlight the diversity, community, and history of our district. We believe at times like these it is important to support and highlight as many projects that encourage community as possible. It is our hope that the council will support this proposal for these 3 wheat pasting installations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sogard. Any further discussion from council on this item? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And that moves us over to item 19, which is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a release of minimum assessment agreement and an agreement for private development, and approving and accepting a warranty deed relative to an agreement for private development with CRMS LLC. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been motion and seconded, and open it up for public discussion. So Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
Yes, actually, what I was concerned about when I read this is that it's completely unintelligible. I mean, I don't know what it means, and I would like to know what this 19 means.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. So from city staff, we just get a 30-second infomercial on that.
Sure, I can address this, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead.
Back in 2018, City Council approved an agreement for private development with CRMS LLC to build a new industrial warehouse out in the North Industrial Park. Subsequently, the owner of the company had a personal accident, and so the project will not be able to move forward at this time. I believe the business that he was running, he was operating a trucking facility, has since closed. And actually, I believe they have filed bankruptcy. So what council's action tonight is doing is accepting the property back from the company and terminating the agreement for private development. So this will get the property back into city hands, which we then can market for future development.
And I'm just curious, is this a no-fault action, that there's no penalty assigned or fine or anything?
That is correct.
And it's no cost to the city, essentially. The city takes back the property free and clear, And one of the requirements is to clear any liens or tax that may be due.
Okay. All right, thank you. So any other discussion from public, questions, anything from council? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 20 is our ordinances, passing an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Garbage and Refuse of the Code of Ordinances relative to refuse rates upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The motion and seconded. And any questions, discussions from the public?
Seeing none. Oh, yes, Jim Skane.
Okay, Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I've gone over this document, and it says that the rates will go up over 2 years, 5%. And then there is a whole process of the increasing costs to the public. And with that 5% increase, the question would be where the extra money would be used. Recently, the process would be, since they call this the municipal and light area, that they would take the money, extra money, from the utilities fund and then transfer to a general fund, and then the general fund would be used to fund economic development projects. And so what I'm really concerned about is, in light of the deep need for improvement in public services, is any of this fund going to be used for that process?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. And from city staff, is there any comment on this item, Mr. Gaines?
Mayor, I'll just jump in real quick. As you all know, just to address this, refuse is an enterprise fund and by state law must fund itself. And going through occasionally, and when I say occasionally, since I think the last time we adjusted refuse rates was 2008, going through and adjusting those to make sure that this fund can pay for itself and the refuse operations can operate as a business, so to speak.
So money taken in from this enterprise fund would simply be used to fund refuse operations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other discussion from council on this? The motion and seconded and require, oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Cruz, go ahead.
I had visited with Mr. Heath, Director Heath, on a question. There was the 260-pound drop-off limit for $7, and it was going to be lowered to 220 pounds. And he was going to check on that, and I don't know if he's online to be able to clarify, or if anybody can clarify that component. Because the presentation showed lowering of that to 220 pounds. If we're going to stick with the 260 pounds, I'm fine with that. That gives the public more ability to drop off more pounds for the $7 minimum.
I guess I don't have that answer right now. Do you, Chase?
I do not, but I believe Brian is online.
Brian's online.
Is he? Okay.
And Mr. Heath, were you able to answer that question for us?
Sure. The answer to that is yes, it's 260 pounds. So the presentation actually showed 220 pounds. However, it's kind of falls in between there, and we chose 260 pounds as the cutoff point.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to thank staff for modifying the large item pickup. There was a discussion on the fee and leaving items until the next week, but I see that we've changed that, so it's $10 for the first 10 items, and over 10 items will be $20 with apparently no limit at this point, so I appreciate that change, and tenants and landlords appreciate that as well.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Any other final discussion? Then it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So item 21, is there a motion to approve bills and payroll?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded, and any discussion? Then this requires a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry, my
do.
mistake. Yeah, so this would be open for public comment, so is that Mr.
Mr. Skeen.
Okay, so Mr. Skeen, go ahead, sir.
Yes, this particular item always gets passed with no comment, and it's probably the most significant item on the agenda. So the people do not know because it's passed without any kind of discussion. Supposedly, there are records in the inaccessible packet, but it would be helpful before this is passed each time to at least provide the bottom line summary of what is spent, bills and payroll. And I know that you're not going to do it, but it would be a service to the public to know how much is being spent and how much is being paid for payroll. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skeen has brought up this comment several times about wanting to have the items read in bills and payroll. We are not going to do that. The council packet is accessible on the city's website. We certainly invite public inspection of those items, and we make sure that it's transparently available to the public for inspection. So it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does City Council have referrals tonight? Mr. Cruz, I think you had one.
I guess my
report.
comment will be more in the update section.
Okay. So any actual referrals then? Seeing none, then that moves us to council updates. So Mr. Cruz, or Councilor Cruz, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, it's, I guess, questioning where we're at. When we talked about the goal setting, the comment that I had was to pull out some of the time-sensitive or time-consuming items that use up a lot of discussion during our two sessions. And one in particular, I believe, was the committee discussion. Like, where are we at with discussing setting up committees with council members? Could we get clarity on that? Is that goal setting, or are we going to talk about that beforehand? I'd like to see that talk beforehand, because that sounds like that would take up a lot of time.
Yeah, so Mr. Gaines and I have talked about that for some of the bigger ticket items that we know would generate a lot of discussion. Potentially, we want to have that as separate work sessions. So that would be, probably would absorb a lot of time if we try to do that in goal setting itself. Mr. Gaines, did you have a timeline? Are we working on that for when we'd want to do the committee's discussion? I don't recall where we were at with that.
So I think we were going to have the portion of that at the October 19th goal-setting session, and that was going to be council effectiveness and the role and all of those type of things. And then we're going to move into probably trying to set a committee meeting for that topic. So,
so that would be the October 19th. So prior to our next council meeting, we would have a council effectiveness work session, and we would discuss.
Are you referring to November as opposed to October?
No, we actually have, that's correct, isn't it, Kevin, that we have Allers Law Firm lined up for that council effectiveness in October 19th.
Okay.
And then goal setting is set for November 17th and 19th. Mm-hmm. So
okay.
So after tonight, we have 3 regularly scheduled council meetings to try to fit some of those committees in.
So the committee discussion is going to be October 19th?
October 19th is going to be the committee discussion on council effectiveness. And then we're going to roll into probably some type of committee discussion after that, and how the council wants to set that up.
Yes, that'd be a follow-on work session after the council effectiveness one.
And then Washington Street.
Talked about that just this morning in our staff meeting, and we're going to try to get Washington Street on in one of the 2 November meetings just prior to goal setting.
Goal setting, okay. Any particular other items that we were going to pull out of goal setting and discuss worth mentioning?
Some of that's probably going to be council decision and how much time it starts to take in goal setting. If there's 7-0, everybody's saying, hey, we want to do that, we'll move forward with that. But if there's not a consensus at goal setting and you'd like to pull that out, we'll continue to do that. The big topics that we really need that are timely really are our financial policies and those type of decisions, which is going to help Jennifer and her staff get to that March deadline.
Okay, I guess I'm looking at the things that would require research on the part of council, but if we're handling the budget primarily, that's fine. Okay.
Okay. Any other staff, or city council updates? Okay, seeing none, then I'll move us over to staff updates, and I certainly want to take this opportunity to welcome our new UNI liaison. So thank you, Mr. Peterson, for joining us tonight, and Mr. Peterson will be here until April. So welcome, Mr. Peterson.
Welcome.
Any comments for us to start? Any updates from UNI?
Yeah.
I want to put you on the spot there.
So part of UNI's Panthers Vote campaign is to have early voting on campus, and that's open to all Blackhawk County voters. And it'll be held at the Dome from October 6th to 10th. UNI had the second highest voter turnout in 2018 for universities across the country, so we really want to keep that going. And then also encourage more people to participate in the College Hill Community Design Project that started October 3rd and goes until the 8th. So just encouraging people to participate in what's going on at the Hill and then also the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you.
Moving over to city staff, do we have any updates for tonight?
Mr. Mayor, no other updates.
Okay. Right now. Thank you. So next item we have is executive session. Executive session to discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code 21.51J to discuss the purchase or sale of real estate when premature disclosure would be reasonably expected to increase the price the government body would have to pay or reduce the price the government body would receive following public forum. Is there a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Okay. It's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So before that, our public forum, speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak tonight? I see none in the chambers, so online.
Jim Skane.
Okay, Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 items I want to talk about. First, is the decision that was made to essentially go forward with a roundabout. And it's interesting that the figure that was used to balance out the cost of each item, whether it's optimized light or a roundabout, is 2045. Now, that's 25 years. The real point is that there will be money spent now, and we don't have any clear indication of whether the projections of 25 years are accurate. So it seems to me that the council makes a mistake in ignoring the fact that it costs 6 or 7 times more, because the $2.8 million is just for the roundabout. It doesn't include property. It doesn't include overruns. And another thing that's disturbing is that they reduced the size of the roundabout, which makes it even less safe. People laud the university roundabouts, but I can attest, because I drive them all the time, I can attest that they are not safe, because if you approach it reasonably, cars coming from your left, you can't see but a second or so before they're on you. And the people, obviously, who like them drive the top half or the bottom half, but they don't consider the traffic that circles. So I just think that it's a waste of money to project out to 25 years in order to even out the cost, when right now we can fix the around the intersection of Green Hill and South Main the way that the intersection of University and Round was fixed, and it's perfect. Okay, it's perfect, and we owe it thanks to the businesses there that refused to have a roundabout. But in any case, that's one item. The second item, again, is the tax. We don't raise enough taxes, and the taxes that are brought in from other sources are not enough. For example, most of the public safety building was built with public option tax and taxes from the casino. Now, again, those were given to that particular project when we are in a woeful state as far as our fire safety is concerned. So it's really strange that the whole process of taxes and where they go is
1 minute
dictated by some notion of the economic development. Now, the third item that I have was the item that was 19, with the whole process of the, no, not 19, the comment that was made about the goal setting. I mean, it's unconscionable that Mr. Gaines does not permit the public to be involved in the goal setting, because what comes out of it is exactly what he wants, and then the CIP is formalized on that basis, and so the agenda for 2021 will be exactly the same as the agenda for the 20.
You're at time, Mr. Skane.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak tonight?
Seeing none?
Okay, seeing none. And any comments from staff on previous speaker? Seeing none. Then we will move to executive session. Now, with that,